Welcome everyone to the WELLther series. This is a follow-up with Doug Lawrence. And Doug shot his videos a couple of years ago. And Doug and I are continued to work together in the international mentoring community. And I just thought that it would be great to catch some insights from Doug about what's happening in his life, what's happening with the international mentoring community as he sees it. And all of you know is that I'm moving towards this world of grandparents and grandkids. And you know that I'm not going to be a grandfather, but Doug is. And I thought it would be great to just bring sort of an update to the WELLther series and just sort of see where it goes. And this is just going to be a free-for-all here and just touch on a few subjects. But again, I think it's always great, Doug, if you want to just share who you are, where you are, what you're up to, and then we'll just take a look at a topic and see where we end up going. How's that?
Yeah, that works great. So I'm Doug Lawrence, obviously. Heard that a couple of times now. So um, I am a international certified mentor, and I have my certificate of competence mentor and my certificate of competence journey mentor that I've received through the work that I've done with the international mentoring community. So going through the whole certification process. I also am working quite diligently in the research and implementation of a mental health mentor. So from the aspect of being part of the support structure for individuals who are struggling or dealing with mental health. As an example, I'm currently, working with one individual who has been diagnosed as having or being bipolar, and we're going through, trying to move her along the healing path to get to a better place. But what I wanted to do was, and maybe just to sort of follow through a little bit more on me. So international certified mentor, working very diligently, like I said, in the aspect of mental health and mentoring. So doing lots of research in that. I'm working on a second book, which will touch on the topic of mentoring and mental health as well. And so I'm working as a journey mentor with a couple individuals out of Portugal and Spain or Brazil. I can't remember the other country, but to help them go through the certification process. So the certificate of competence mentor, and then, obviously we'll have that conversation around whether or not they wish to go down the journey mentor path. But I wanted to share a couple insights. And the first was that for them to go down this certification path, it was done with the idea in mind of bolstering their credibility in the translation service area as mentors. And so they both saw the value in going down that path of certification and credibility part. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that I do encourage people that are, obviously listening to this update is, if you're not quite sure, should I go down this path of becoming certified as a certificate of competence mentor, or even the journey mentor one, is to just reach out and ask. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, and asking questions doesn't cost money. So, feel free and feel comfortable in wanting to be able to do that. On the mentoring side, I've kind of touched on things a little bit already, where I've talked about working with in the mental health space. So obviously working with the young individual that was diagnosed with bipolar, and I have a number of other individuals that I'm working with as well that have been diagnosed with mental health challenges, and we're working through being able to deal with that. What's also very interesting, and it's actually, it sort of whets your appetite just a little bit, is when you take a look at the book that I'm writing that will be published sometime this fall, is that there's, I believe it's 5 individuals I've interviewed, and that interview, each one of those interviews will be part of a chapter in the book. And it you sometimes wonder, well, geez, I don't think this could happen to me, or I would never feel like that. And here's some real true life stories, some shared lived experience from 5 different individuals who come at it from, from a individual who is very plugged into a network or a community, that the community was relying on that individual, and then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, she's starting to distance herself because she needs to keep that social distancing in place, virtual or otherwise. And you have practitioners, so people that can give the organizational aspect of it, and then people that are just dealing with life itself and all the challenges that it's bringing, and how that's contributing to their mental health state as well. So lots of exciting things going on in the mentoring space that way. One of the other things is the work that you've been doing on, in the grandparent space, kind of rang a bell for me. So it it's very, so maybe the best thing for me to do is to sort of set the stage for this next part. And that's that on the 6th of February, my wife passed away, and we both had worked very diligently at building relationships with our 2 grandchildren. Very diligently, because when we looked back at what had taken place with our 2 children, and because of obviously me being a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and being bounced all over Canada, our 2 children didn't get to spend as much time with their grandparents as what our current grandchildren are getting to do. So they have, they need to see grandpa now. They pick up the phone and, grandpa, can you come for brunch? Or grandpa, can you come over for a visit because we haven't seen you for a while, or stuff like that, where our children, every 6 months got to see one set of grandparents, because we used to do the holiday thing and we go to one side one half of the year and go to the other side the other half. So building that relationship as a grandparent is extremely important. And I see it even today, because on the weekend, I went for brunch, and my granddaughter came and sat on my lap and put her head on my shoulder and, stole grandpa's heart again. And the other part that was really heart-rendering for me was she sat down and she drew a picture of a heart, and then on another page she wrote, "I love you." And I go, you think about all the time and effort that we put into building those relationships as grandparents, how you wonder, will that ever pay off? And I'm here to tell you that yes, it does pay off. So for me, there's some really key words that I think about as as I'm sharing this story or this lived experience with you, and that's how important love is. So, and it's love from the aspect of giving and getting or receiving. So all the love that we put into the relationship with our 2 grandchildren, Thomas and Olivia, all the love that we poured into them is now coming back to us, as they know things are not normal anymore, and they're doing their best that they possibly can to try and keep things in the proper context. And when you think, gosh, for young people that are 7 and 4 and a bit, you go, where did this wisdom and knowledge come from? And then you start to think, well, just a minute, I played a part in contributing to them thinking the way that they're thinking. And their mom and dad, certainly played a significant role in that as well. The second part that I thought about was, and I've kind of mentioned it already, and that's the aspect of relationships. And as grandparents, it's really important that we look at things from the aspect of how quickly can we build relationships with our grandchildren? How quickly can we, obviously that's part of our legacy story. And so how quickly can we actually build that relationship with them and continue to maintain it? And by doing so, go through the experience that I just shared with you, to be able to do that. And the other part, one of the other aspects that I'm finding is that I have a lot of respect for Thomas and a lot of respect for Olivia. And I guess I'm somewhat biased. Olivia kind of touches my heart where no one else can. And I have a lot of respect for her and her thoughts and how she's a very focused young lady and how she can sometimes zone everything else around her. And I just have to respect that. And then I look at how we communicate as grandparents with our grandchildren and even with our children is, you need to take the time to be able to have those meaningful conversations with them. And one of my favorite things that I think about all the time is, well, you need to do this because that's not an option. Because is not an option. You need to do this because of this, or these are the outcomes that we're working towards, or it's not behavior that's supported, and here's the reason why. And so we need to be able to have that effective conversation, using proper tools and techniques to be able to do that. We need to be able to have those conversations with our grandchildren as part of, sharing that legacy, sharing our lived experience with them, to be able to, to just keep that relationship as strong as you possibly can. And when I think of grandparents and I think of mentoring, there's so much similarity between the two, is that at the end of the day, grandparents are those individuals who do have that legacy that they can share through mentoring and through sharing those lived experiences to help foster that legacy and to continue to maintain its growth over time, so that, there's going to be a lot more of those I love you notes. There's going to be a lot more of those hearts being drawn. And you can get there as a grandparent if you love, you build those relationships, you have mutual respect for each other, and you communicate and have those meaningful conversations on an ongoing basis. And I think lastly, one of the things that I wanted to share was the fact that this very same story that I'm sharing, this lived experience that I'm sharing with you today, is just one of many that I'm now sharing through my podcast circuit, for lack of a better choice of words, that I encourage people to, to take a look online and do a search for, podcast Doug Lawrence, and you'll find a lot of different themes. But my message in those podcasts reinforces what we just finished talking about.
Well, thank you, Doug. And on behalf of myself, and I've shared with you many times because we've had many conversations, but I'm also going to take the energy of those who are watching it, one person, many people, and wishing you and the family the best. Okay. And
yeah, thank you.
And in all respects, okay. And I thank you for laying it out there for us to understand it, because it is part of life. And I am going to use because it is part of life. Be the cause of life,
Yeah.
right? And so I celebrate you, sir. I celebrate you.
Thank you.
And I celebrate the two little ones and your kids as well, because along the way, we're going to probably have more update videos about what's happening and drawing a connection between mentoring and grandparenting, because that's one of the things that I see can unfold because of situations like this, but also just to be in that relationship and respecting each other. And people know that, or you, if this is the first time you're listening into our conversation, is grandparenting grandkids in nature is sort of my connection, and how might I bring mentoring into that, and another word called celebrant. And Doug is traveling with me on that one, as I've traveled with him with the Journey Mentor, and how we might be able to be for the world, be for the planet. So again, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If I may, I'd like to just pick up a couple of threads here
Yes.
from a tapestry point of view. And I'm going to start off in the area of respect, because respect is one of the 7 core ethical values that mentors practice through. And sometimes we get a little lost in what it means to respect another person, or respect even the mentee if things are sort of going to go a little sideways, and to bring that back into us as we involve ourselves in those relationships. And I'm just, from your perspective and your experience, what has respect meant for you when you're mentoring?
From my perspective, I think that respect leads to credibility. And I find that, and it's mutual. I guess I'd be remiss if I said it any other way, but respect is two-way. And so when I'm mentoring, one of the things that I'm looking at, not only am I looking at garnering trust in a relationship, but I'm also looking at it from the aspect of respect as well. So, does the individual where I'm there to be their guide, do they respect the aspect of the mentoring journey? Do they respect the aspect of an effective mentor and what that means? Are they willing to commit? Are they respectful enough to be able to commit to the journey and to the mentoring process? So it covers a lot of all those topics. But it's just as important. Those were all certainly from the aspect of what I was expecting from them, but they also have an expectation of me as their mentor, is to be able to, I'm non-judgmental. I respect who they are and what they're going through, and I'm searching for ways that I can help them get through that as best that we possibly can in a respectful manner.
It's very much about the acknowledgement of the other person who's sitting across from you, and in reciprocation, as you're indicating, and that the person is fully bringing their capabilities and their competence and their continuance into that conversation. Because sometimes people just sort of sit back and think things are just going to miraculously happen. And I've had a few of those along the way, just the same as yourself. They sort of sit back in their chair, and you can just sort of see them take this sort of position of, okay, I'll do this. I don't know if it'll really work or not, but when you get into that notion of that respect, and you mentioned it in terms of the grandchildren as well, respecting them and you role modeling it so that they're respecting you. That's why there's this mentoring grandparenting storyline just weaves together so well. And I just want to make that connection. Okay. And I think that that's important. But there's something else, and I'm going to go for it here. It's around the notion of heart resonance. Okay. Is that we are energetic beings. And when we get into a mentoring relationship, a grandparenting relationship, a relationship with a loved one, relationship with the kids, there is a heart resonance that is there. And I'll have to admit, and Doug and I've talked this a little bit about this, is because I've had to look at this myself. The notion of what does it mean from an EQ perspective? We've heard this emotion quotient, but it also came from a place of empathy for me, And I had to start paying a little bit more attention to that as I moved into the latter part of my life, because I was a very linear, logical, do it that way. And all of a sudden went, hey, there's another perspective that's growing around in me. Now, this is a long-winded way of just saying to, what does heart resonance mean to you?
I think the story I shared right at the beginning of my granddaughter drawing the picture of a heart, and then on the second page writing "I love you." That to me was that's deep heart resonance in its most in the most possible way that it could ever be. Is
Sort of
that
in its purest form, in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah, in the purest context that you could ever ask for. If somebody said, "What was your definition?" That was it right there. Was that, you know, the and I look at deep heart resonance as love. So, and the story behind love is that, you know, we what we give, we get in return. So if you're, you know, if you're not open to sharing your love with others, then that's what you should expect to get in return. And when I think of, you know, all the wonderful people out there that have, you know, stepped forward and said, you know, our deepest sympathies, and whatever we can do to help you, we will.
Mm-hmm.
That's deep heart resonance.
Yeah. So you've got to experience it in a lot of different levels for yourself,
Yeah.
and in a very short time in some ways, because again, your family wasn't expecting all of this to unfold the way that unfolded. And I celebrate who you are and appreciate who you are, because I also know that on these podcasts, you find yourself every once in a while, oh yeah, well, there's a story here. And that story of my lived experience, I think, is going to help you, because as a journey mentor, I can understand this part of it. So that's why I'm weaving this tapestry in this video, and to touch this so that others might understand that it's okay to be where you are right now.
And it's okay to share.
And it's okay to share.
Yeah.
And I've seen, and I hinted at it a little bit, because I didn't share some of this when I was doing some of my work. And now that I do, I just find that I'm sitting in my truth and we're having great conversations. Yes, it might well something up, it might well something up in the other person, but the notion of well up, WELL, is about being well.
Exactly.
Right. And again, Doug and I have talked a lot about this. And I also want to state for the record, I did not know completely where we would go with this update. All right. Because it was up to Doug what he wanted to share. But I thought it was important that we touch bases with the Wellthers, because they are being fully human, and in ways that are great examples for us. And for that reason alone, Doug, thank you, from me, but also from those who are going to watch it. Now, you know that as we go out of these kind of video conversations, I always give the person that I'm interacting with the last words. Is there anything in particular that you want to share with us at this point in time?
I guess the one thing was just to validate what you said, where you said you had no idea where this was going to go. Neither did I. Neither did I.
And we are where we are.
Yeah.
And with that, Doug, sir, I thank you.
Thank you.